Welcome back to another video, guys, and this is the Astro RC Air Tank 35. You might have seen a couple of shorts on the channel about it. Now, we're working through our review, but one thing that we've noticed does really well on the channel in the past is to separate out the setup and the tech details of how to get this thing in the air from the actual review itself. So before we go out and fly it some more, probably at the weekend, what we'll do is we're going to put together this video, which is basically how you get it up in the air, how you bind it, what the PIDs are like, what this is like, what that, all that sort of amazing jazz that's in these things. So without further ado, let's go over to the bench. So this is the Astro RC Air Tank 35. I keep slipping over myself and almost calling it the Air Tanker 35. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to basically just do the tech setup, and we're going to set it all up and find out what it's all about before we go and fly it. So let's move over to Betaflight right now. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to grab yourself a USB cable. Now, thankfully, Astro RC have improved the design of this. Now, the actual board is still a USB micro, but they've soldered on an extension board so that we can just plug in here, and it's USB-C. Apologies that this may not be as smooth as normal because we are changing everything around in the studio, so this camera might have a little bit of shake on it, but we will do our best to minimize that in post if indeed it becomes a problem. So once you're plugged in, move over to Betaflight, and we're going to have a quick look at some of the details in here, look at some of the settings, some of the details, and how and where we go from here to get this thing in the air. Now, the version that I was sent has a O4 Pro in it, and it doesn't have ELRS in it. And I specifically requested that because a few of you guys have been getting a little bit confused how you actually bind up your DJI controllers to these plug and play models. So we're going to go through that and we're going to explain all that to you, make it as easy as we can. First things first, though, you want to make sure that this is moving in the same direction on the screen, and it is. So that means that it's set up absolutely fine. Now, in our ports tab, a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of a tip for you. If you're setting up, or for whatever reason you don't have the right serial RXs and stuff selected in here, and I'm going to explain what all that means now. If you're using a DJI S Bus system, wherever your DJI is plugged into, so whatever you are plugged into on your VTX, it's normally just +1 for your serial RX. So let me explain what all that means first of all before I lose half of you in at the start here. It's all set up exactly how it needs to be. I'm going to save a copy of this configuration and I'm going to upload it to my Discord. So if you ever do lose it and make a mistake, you can just go there and you can grab it without too much stress, etc. But if you are to need to know what's going on in here, I'm going to give you a very quick overview. So serial RX relates to, in this instance, your controller. So what UART your controller is selected to. And again, if you're really new to the hobby, you might be thinking, the fuck's a UART? Well, put dead simply, a UART is basically like a port on the flight controller, and you plug things into that port, and each port's got a number on it, but we call them UARTs. Now, you don't specifically plug in anything for this. You may just plug in a harness, and then you'd be wondering, well, which UART is this? And as I say, if you plug in, for instance, an O4 Pro to UART 6 with a full harness, and you're going to use the DJI you're going to use the DJI FPV controller, you just go +1 to add your serial RX. So we can see here, we've plugged in to UART number 6 for the actual O4 Pro. We go +1 for the serial, which takes us back to UART number 1. And it's as simple and straightforward as that. On UART number 2, they've already set up GPS for us, but this one doesn't actually come with the GPS. You can add it in, and if you want, in a future video, we can add in an ELRS and GPS receiver. Let me know in the comments down below if that's something you guys would be interested in doing. We've got obviously our configuration and MSPs. Again, we don't need to touch anything in here. We're just going to move straight on to our configuration. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to make sure are selected in here to save us going crazy. First things first is we need to make sure that air mode is selected, which it is. What air mode does is when you go to 0 throttle after a loop or a roll or a power loop or whatever, it keeps the props spinning to give you authority in the air. If air mode is off, as you go to 0 throttle, your drone will just do this as it comes down, and you have no authority in the air whatsoever. Obviously, you can hit throttle and you can regain that authority. Sometimes it might be too late. So it's important to have air mode on. Now, if you've seen recently, I've been trying to land on poles and stuff, and my drone, when I try and land it, bounces like this. Well, that's air mode kicking in. And what we could do, we could have air mode on a switch so that when we try and land on a pole, for instance, we can turn air mode off. So when we do touch down for the first time, we can just stay there. But again, you need to remember you need to keep some throttle on yourself and stuff. So if you're a newbie, keep air mode on. But that's what air mode does. That's a real quick whistle-stop tour of air mode. GPS we're going to have on, even though we don't have a GPS in this drone, because you may need it in the future. LED strip is on and OSD is on as well. Now over here you can have, this is called D-Shot beacon configuration, and you can have RX lost. So if you lose your signal, I'm not going to turn it on because it's going to start beeping, but if you lose your signal, you don't have a signal connected to this drone, it will start beeping and make it easy for you to find. I would recommend, if you're a newbie, that you turn this on. I recommend you probably turn it on for most people, to be fair. Your board and center alignment, well, we don't need to touch that. We'd only ever need to touch that if on this first screen here, the drone wasn't moving in the same way that it does on screen. It just means that board and center alignment is wrong. Everything else in there is fine. There's nothing to change. Like I say, I would highly recommend you turn this on, but what will happen, as soon as I plug a LiPo in, it'll start beeping like crazy because it won't have a connection. Moving down to power and battery. So Astro RC have set the maximum cell voltage to 4.36. What I do is I just set it to 4.4, and then that way you're never going to have an issue. Why do I do that? Well, if this is an LIHV battery, which you charge to 4.35 volts instead of 4.2 volts, and you haven't set that particular thing to 4.4 or 4.35, when it gets above 4.2, instead of it seeing it charged as, say, a fully charged 4S, it will see it as a 5S that's dead. You can still fly it, but your OSD will be completely wrong. And I have flown many a pack with the wrong OSD, and it doesn't cause any problems to your flight, doesn't make anything happen, it doesn't override anything, but you've just got to be aware, how long can I fly this drone for? So the easiest thing is to make sure your maximum cell voltage is set to 4.4 on all of your quads, and then you'll never get caught out. Failsafe, we are set to land. Why are we set to land? Do we have a GPS in this? I need to just double check this. Let me have a look. Without taking it off, but I'm almost certain there are no wires going up there. Almost certain there is no GPS in there. So because I don't think there's a GPS in there, I'm going to set it to drop. And it's important as well, I think, just to have this conversation. Set it to drop or to GPS rescue. Don't set it to land, because if it lands and you lose... So, okay, if you've set it to land and you lose signal on the other side of a lake that's completely inaccessible, how are you going to get it back? So drop and GPS rescue are the two ones that you should use. I don't envisage anything where really you want to be using land, because you've just got no control over it. And if you completely lose signal and you don't have GPS, you want it to get down as quickly as possible so that it's not carrying on forever or hitting somebody in the head or so on and so forth. If you did have a GPS, then you'd set GPS rescue on in here, and all the values have been pre-selected for us. Really quickly, I just want to say this. I do say this in every video, so if you've heard it before, I'm sorry. This value, minimum satellites, can be set to whatever you want. But if you select this radio button here, allow arming without a fix, and you take off, it's set to 8. So if you take off on 7 satellites, some people are under the misguided impression that it'll give you a little bit of GPS rescue, when the truth of the matter is it will give you no GPS rescue. And that's really important, because it means that if you lose signal or you hit GPS rescue and you haven't reached whatever this number is that you've set it to, it will just drop. Be it over an ocean, a building, or God forbid, a person's head. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, now in presets, we are going to hit save backup, and we are going to save a copy of this backup to the desktop. I will upload that to the Discord. If you ever get stuck, it will be there for you as an indomitable reminder forever. Now, into PID tuning. This is the PID tune, and this is the filter tune pauser video if you need it on here, but you don't need it because you can just join the Discord and download the file. Now, I've set my rates to this: 900, 900, 800, and 0.5 expo with 10 center sensitivity. I probably wouldn't advise yourselves to do that if you are not used to flying similar rates. If you are more of a newbie, then we have got a video on different rate profiles that you can select as a newbie that will make your life a little bit less stressful for being in the air. And I'll link that in the top right corner now. In receiver, we just need to make sure that this is selected to S-bus, which it is. Now, normally on most of my videos, we set it to crossfire, but we don't have an ELRS receiver in here, so we're going to set it to S-bus. Now, I'm going to come back to this in a second when I've got the goggles and the controller. OSD is very personal. Have it set up however you want it. This is how it came set up. I've not bothered to change it. So, it is what it is. And that's it. That is the sort of overview of what is in Betaflight. And what we're going to do now is we're going to show you how to set up your switches. Okay, so as we move into the next step, what I need you to do is grab your DJI goggles and your DJI FPV3 remote control. Now, what throws a lot of people here, and I think this should make it a little bit more simple and straightforward, is that your goggles or your controller binds to your goggles, and then your goggles binds to the O4. So let's do that first of all. Now, these are already bound, but we'll show you the process. So if we move the drone out of the way for now, you turn on the goggles by pressing and then holding. And then you do exactly the same with the controller. You press and you hold. Now, that's going to beep to tell you that it's connected to each other in a second. Hopefully this microphone, there we go, we'll pick it up. But if that isn't the case, this is what you do. You hold the power button of the goggles down. You just hold it. You don't press it. You just hold it. And that's now in binding mode. You do exactly the same with the controller. And they will find each other. There we go. So with that beeps and the solid lights, that now shows that they've found each other and they're bound to each other. You need to leave your goggles turned on for this next step. So I'm just going to put the goggles over here, but you'll notice that I've not turned them off. They are still on. Okay. Then you need to get the drone, and I'm trying not to shake this desk. Once you've got the drone, we're already plugged into Betaflight, so you would be thinking by now, wouldn't you? Aha! We can just go into the ports tab. You'll be thinking, we can go into the receiver tab and we can check, and we've got we've got no signal. Why is none of this moving? Well, you've also got to power the air unit in order to do that. So you're going to need to plug a LiPo in. My advice is always do not follow me and remove your props. I have not removed my props. This is at my own risk. It is very, very dangerous, but listen for the beep. Now, did you hear the goggles beep? And we can now see we are connected because we've got, Jesus Christ, I thought I was being held hostage then. And we can check on here. The yaw is working. That is working. So if I just move this out of here. So everything's working exactly as it is. Now, you shouldn't be able to arm this quad when you're connected. There is something called an arming flag, which should stop you doing it. However, my advice is always take the props off. Now, we know then that all these are moving in exactly the right way. So we can move into our modes tab and we can set up the modes however we want them. I'm just going to move this over to LED low. It makes no difference. Cool. Now, if I move this one to there, it'll turn the LEDs off. And we can set that up on a switch. So let's do that now. Which switch do we want? Well, I don't know. Let's have the record switch. So if we press auto here, and it won't let me use that switch. So let me use that in a medium and high configuration. So if we move this to here and hit save, we can now turn them off and on that switch. I like them on, personally. Your arm, again, press auto, whichever one you want to use. Well, I use this one, and I put it into that position to make it armed. And I would also advise, this is a 4S. Should have a face cam on right now because it's annoying me. This is a 4S powerful drone, so I would always advise with anything like this, what you do is you set up a pre-arm switch as well. And the pre-arm switch is under pre-arm, and I can't find pre-arm. Where is pre-arm? I always do this. I spend more time looking for the word pre-arm than, there we go, add range, than I do for a spot that starts with a G. Right, okay, so if we leave this to auto, and we will press down on that as well. So in order to arm the quad, both switches now need to be in that position. And I'll show you a demonstration. I really shouldn't, and I wouldn't advise that you do this, but I'm a trained professional, so it's at my own discretion. I would advise you don't do what I'm about to do, though. It still won't arm because we've just unplugged it from here, and it's still got that Betaflight arming flag attached to it. So we're just going to need to reboot it. And we'll give it a... It's giving me a migraine, I've got to be honest. Okay, so we now know that we connected because this has come on. I am a trained professional, so I'm going to show you this, but I'd advise you never to do this inside, okay? And do as I say, not as I do. Right, this is the arming switch. So you would think, press arm, the motors are not spinning. Because we've also set up a pre-arm. So your pre-arm has to be in the armed position, and your arm position also has to be in the armed position before it will arm. And that's why we don't do it inside, because I think it's a bit of an uneven surface here. And it tried to correct itself on the PID loop. Now, luckily, everything was fine. But that's why we always say, props off, don't do that sort of stuff inside. But I wanted to show you guys why we use that pre-arm and how that pre-arm works. Whenever you land, you need to reset your pre-arm button as well, all the way back to the top. Reset your arming button, and then pre-arm and arm. Bit like an ignition switch, essentially. And that is that. It's simple as that. The O4 Pro came already activated from Astro RC. If yours doesn't come already activated, then there's going to be a video there. And that video will show you how to activate, set up, and some suggestions on best settings for the O4 Pro. There is no one size fits all best setting when it comes to the O4 Pro. They are all obviously different depending on different lighting and stuff, but it's something to consider and bear in mind. I'd advise you not to, in fact, let me show you one more thing. You're going to need the DJI Assistant 2 Consumer Drone Series. Really important that you get the Consumer Drone Series and not just DJI Assistant 2. And we're going to plug the cable this time, not into the back where we did at the start of this video. We're going to plug it into the actual O4 Pro unit up here at the front. And that's going to pop up some details. It's going to pop up some flights because we was flying it yesterday and all that sort of good stuff. You may be able, no, it won't play, will it? If I use this and do this and do this, lovely and smooth. Now, it was set to 1080p, so you're probably never going to see this flight outside of here, but you can see all the drones and I on the right hand side there. I'm the attractive one, obviously. And yeah, we did have our third spotter with us for when we flew together later on in the day as well. So yeah, that's how you will get your flights off. You plug it in like this and it pops up. Sometimes people get a bit confused with that. Most people are okay with it. But it's there. The information's there if you need it, you use it. Now, what I do need to tell you is do not upgrade to version 1.0.5 because there are reported bugs in it when you're changing the power levels. And if you set it to dynamic and that sort of stuff, when it changes the power levels, it's rebooting that O4 Pro. That could potentially be mid-flight. I actually flew this on 0.3. I didn't even know that. So I'm going to upgrade it to 0.4 now. This is how you upgrade it. Press upgrade and it upgrades. I would advise you don't go past 0.4. Stay on 0.4 at the absolute most for the time being, just until we're able to investigate those reports. I've tried to reproduce it and I've not been able to reproduce it, and that does suggest to me that it may well be just with the brand new versions, but I can't say for sure. The brand new versions of the O4 Pro, they may have something in them different than the older versions. Based upon that, don't go past 0.4 for now. If you're not on 0.4, update to 0.4, because sometimes you may not be able to connect to your goggles unless you're on, I think 0.3. So I think that's how we got away with that there. And that's it. So once this is done, all you do is unplug it and away you go, and just follow the protocols and the procedures that I've already shown you in this video. And it's as simple as that. But if you do have any questions whatsoever, please do drop them in the comments down below, because this is what we're here to do. We're here to help you guys get up in the air and get going. And for some reason, like I said, the S-Bus system with the DJI controller and goggles does throw people off. It may be that they might not know to plug a battery in, or it may be that they might not know to bind the controller to the goggles first, because it doesn't make sense, does it? It's not logical. You want to bind your controller to your drone, of course you do, and that will throw some people off. So as always, if you've got any questions whatsoever, drop them in the comments down below. We'll have a full review of this coming out in the next few days. Early indications are it's bloody fun to fly. That's all I can say at this moment in time. This is also a modular head system as well, so this will move between the Air Tank 35, 30 and 25. By the way, we have the 30 and the 25 as well, so we're going to showcase those and we're going to show them off as well. You've all been amazing. Until next time, like, hype, comment, share, and sell your firstborn, and I'll see you on the next one. YouTube and I have had a chat, and we believe that this is the video that you'll like the most, so watch it and let me know if they're right.